let me give you a few definitions of history. History is a pack of lies about events that never happened, told by people who weren't there. That's actually my favorite one. And I shouldn't be saying this as a writer of historical fiction. I shouldn't be saying these things about history. Let me give you another one. History is gossip well told. And of course, there's a third one, which actually tops all of these. History, an account mostly false, of events mostly unimportant, brought about by rulers mostly knaves, and soldiers mostly fools. Uh, the most famous one, of course, is the fact that history is written by the victors. And it's so true as far as India goes. And today's presentation and my talk to you is really an appeal that I want my history back. I want the real history of India back. I'm not a historian, but I've spent the last 8 years writing books which involve history. And I can see that a lot of the history that I'm taught is not the real history of this country. This is a quote from Max Muller. And he wrote this in 1868. India has been conquered once, but India must be conquered again. And that second conquest should be a conquest by education. As to religion, that will take care of itself. The ancient religion of India is doomed. And if Christianity does not step in, whose fault will it be? It's just to give you an idea regarding the perspective from which scholars were rewriting Indian history. So as a result of which we created this wonderful theory. It was called the Aryan invasion theory. India was invaded by Indo-European tribes, the Aryans, around 1500 BC. They overran a more advanced Dravidian civilization, which was the Indus Valley. The Aryans did not add anything. They brought basically just their language, Sanskrit. The Aryans were not our rishis and munis who sat down and wrote the Vedas. The Aryans were primitive plunderers. The Vedas were simply products of a dark age following the destruction of the Indus Valley. And the history of India could be seen primarily as a series of outside invasions. Aryans, Persians, Greeks, we've been conquered and invaded by all. The more the merrier. So what was the corollary to this Aryan invasion theory? Well, on one side, we had the Indus Valley civilization. We had archaeology telling us about these wonderful monuments, but it didn't have a corresponding body of literature. And then on the other hand, we had the Vedas, which was a body of literature without a civilization. And it was common sense to actually club these two together, but common sense rarely works when it comes to history. Luckily for us, our scriptures talk of the river Sarasvati, and the Sarasvati is what helps us going down the ages. May the divine Sarasvati protect us well, furthering our thoughts with might. Divine Sarasvati, whose limitless unbroken flood, swift moving with a rapid rush, comes onward with tempestuous roar, majesty amongst the mighty ones, in glory swifter than the other rapid streams, created for vast for victory, guide us, O Saraswati, to glorious treasure. This is from the Rig Veda. But you know, the problem was that there was no river Saraswati. So what happened? Where was the so-called Saraswati? It didn't seem to exist. But thankfully, technology has moved on. And now satellite imaging has actually discovered the dried riverbed of the Saraswati. The arid desert region, which we now know as Rajasthan and the Thar Desert, was actually once lush green, owing to the Saraswati River. And more importantly, over 1,400 of the 2,600 Indus Valley sites were actually along the banks of the Saraswati. Tectonic movements halted the Saraswati's flow, and the river began drying up from around 3000 BC onwards. And so, what we do know is that the Rig Veda had to be authored sometime before 3000 BC, because otherwise, our Rishi and Munis must have been on some mind-expanding substances if they were writing about a river that didn't exist. So, drying of the river produced an eastward and westward migration. That's common sense, that if a river suddenly dries up, you're going to have migrations to new water resources. The eastward migrations resulted in the Ganges Valley becoming the next major civilization. But the westward migrations were towards the Indus and then further on towards Sumeria. And Sumeria is very interesting because it's modern day Iraq, but it's derived from the conjunction of two words, Su and Meru. Both are Sanskrit words. Su meaning holy, Meru meaning mountain, holy mountain. That's the name that was created for modern day Iraq from two conjunctive Sanskrit words. The drying of the Sarasvati would have created the need for cattle preservation. Suddenly you had cattle counts depleting. So now you had to create the holy cow. How else to preserve cattle? And of course it implied a return to agriculture. Hence India's greatest agricultural mascot, Krishna, because the word Krishna comes from Krishi, agriculture. It's the agrarian way of life. So now let's look at the funny sort of connection. If we take Hinduism as the proxy for religion in India, and we take Zoroastrianism as the proxy for religion in what is now modern day Iraq, and in those days ancient Sumeria, we have forces of good and evil. In Hinduism, we call them the Devas, and we call the bad ones the baddies, the goodies and the baddies. The goodies are the Devas, and the baddies are the Asuras. And then, of course, in Zoroastrianism, we have the exact opposite. In Zoroastrianism, the good guys are the Ahuras, and the bad guys are the Devas. So what it tells you is that probably this was a common group which somehow didn't get along with each other. And as they split up, they said, well, you know, your enemy is my friend. Okay. We know that in Sumeria, this was the point from where Judaism was created. Abraham, the patriarch of Judaism, lived in Sumeria, in a little city called Ur. Now, what's interesting about the Abraham name is I'm going to take the A from the Abraham, and I'm going to put it at the end. And this is what I come up with, Brahma. And of course, what is very interesting, Old Testament had a wife, and her name was Sarah. And Brahma, who is he depicted with? Come on, guys, some of you. Sarasvati. So see the connection? Probably the same people. Probably the same people described differently. Look at the biblical Trinity, the Father, the Son, the Holy Ghost. In Hinduism, we also have trinities, right? The only difference is we have two. We have a male and a female. The male is made up of Brahma, Vishnu, and Shiva. And we have the female, which is made up of Lakshmi, Saraswati, and Kali. Now, what happens in case we bring the two triangles together? You get a six-pointed star, which is the combination of male and female, a combination of all six forms of energy. Now, for a minute, do you see where I'm going with this? Look, there are more connections than we can imagine. Want to hear some more connections? Okay. This number, 786, very holy, right? 786 is actually the summation of all the numbers of the first sentence of the Holy Quran. 786. The subcontinent, all Muslims of the subcontinent, India, Bangladesh, Pakistan, consider this to be a very holy number. In fact, you can see 786 on coins minted as far back as 1616. Even today, you can see people using 786 on their cars as a registration number. People use it as a phone number. And of course, we had Amitabh Bachchan using 786 on his billa, as it were. Mithunda didn't want to be outdone, so he came up with Billa 786. And of course, in recent times, you've had Khiladi 786, right? I don't know how many of you have watched it. I've not seen it as yet. But the point I'm making is it's a very holy number. Now, for a minute, I want you to take the 786 and let's rewrite it in Hindi. I think I've got it right. 786 rewritten in Hindi numerals. Now let's take each of these numbers, the 7, the 8, and the 6. Do you see where I'm going with this? Now let's flip it around. What do I get? The Roman god Mithras was resurrected on the second Sunday of April. Mithras. The second Sunday of April is more commonly celebrated as Easter Sunday. And mind you, Mithras was resurrected. The Roman Mithras is derived from the Zoroastrian Mithra. And by the way, the Zoroastrian Mithra is the same as the Rig Vedic Mithra. This is the Mastaba of Djoser in Egypt. It's a precursor to the later pyramids. Probably dates back to around 2800 odd BC. Each slab follows the Vedic directions for a Shamshan Chit. Exact, down to the last detail, a funeral altar. And remember, a pyramid is a funeral altar because it's a place where you bury the dead. And it's not surprising because if you really look at the Pythagorean theorem, which came around after, well, sometime between 570 and 490 BC, but prior to Pythagoras, you had Bodhyana, who was a good 250 years before that. And if you take the common form of the Pythagorean theorem, which talks about the hypotenuse being fundamentally a function of the two sides, well, Bodhyana says a rope stretched along the length of the diagonal produces an area which the vertical and the horizontal sides make together. Pretty much the Pythagoras theorem. Maybe not down to the last detail, but pretty much like that. So let me take you to another number, 108. Hindu rosaries have 108 beads. The rosary represents the ecliptic, the path of the sun and the moon. There are 27 nakshatras, and each nakshatra has 4 padas. So you have 108 steps, which represent the path that the sun takes. The distance between the earth and the sun is exactly 100 times the sun's diameter. This science has figured out for us now. The distance between the earth and the moon is 108 times the moon's diameter. And the diameter of the sun is 108 times the earth's diameter. And that's the reason why 18, 108, 1008, 10,008, all of these numbers are considered holy by us. Consider the fact that the Yadavs were a federation of 18 tribes. Consider that Jarasandh attacked Mathura 18 times. Consider the fact that the Mahabharata war lasted 18 days. The Great War was fought by 18 armies. The Mahabharata has 18 chapters. There are 18 chapters in each of the Vedas. There were 18 Maharathis, or exalted warriors, in the Mahabharata. And there are a total of 18 Puranas. Now, archaeologists, Russian archaeologists, have found earthenware in what is now modern-day Iraq. And they found earthenware pertaining to astronomers' charts. And those charts indicate a list of 18 constellations of the moon, the modern prototype of the zodiac. Now look at this. Please count along with me. 1, 2, 3, 4. See where I'm going? 5, 6, 7, 8. One symbol, 8 limbs. See the pattern? 18, the Hindu swastik. You'll see this recurrence of 18 everywhere. So, that brings me now to a completely unrelated theory. I love going from one topic to another. The Big Bang. Modern physics now tells us that the universe was created from a single point of energy. And that single point of energy expanded into what is now commonly the universe, and that we are still expanding. The question that physics is unable to answer is what was there before that single point of energy? Was that single point of energy God? Or did God create that single point of energy? Or was there nothing? Did the single point of energy suddenly arrive? Now physics tells us that when we have gone through the process of expansion, we will eventually have a period known as the Big Crunch. The Big Bang will be followed by a Big Crunch, and we will again have a single point of energy, and what is commonly called the black hole. We'll have a black hole. The funny thing is that the Upanishads told us this a long time ago. They said that at the end of the day, there are two forces: Shiv, which is the form of destruction, contraction, and Vish, which is the form of creation or expansion. And what they create between them is Brahma or Brahmand, the universe. In fact, the word Brahmand, Brahm and And. Brahm meaning creation and And meaning Anda, the egg-shaped universe. That's where you get Brahmand from. So you can see the Big Bang explained even in 108. How? One is the single point of energy from which the universe was created. Zero, the egg-shaped universe or the Brahmand that results. And 8, if you were to flip it around on its axis, it's an infinity sign. So you're expanding up to infinity. We created the world's first university in Takshila. We gave the world chess. We performed cataract surgery in 600 BC. We calculated the Earth's diameter and the distance between the Earth and the Moon in 3000 BC. We gave the world the zero as far back as the Indus Valley civilization. We calculated the speed of light 5,000 years ago. We gave the world its numbering system. India has a glorious past. Why can't it have a glorious present and a future too? This is where I want to end off. What you need to know about the past is that no matter what has happened, it has all worked together to bring you to this very moment. And this is the moment you can choose to make everything new right now. Explore the past, enlighten the present, empower the future.